This is the midterm listening comprehension test, which consists of 3 separate parts and 20 questions in total. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the questions, and you will have a chance to check your answers. All the recordings will be played once only. At the end of the test, you will be given 5 minutes to copy your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Part 1. Part 1. You are going to hear 7 short monologues or conversations, and each of them is followed by 1 question. For questions 1 to 7, choose the best answers, A to D. First, you will have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. Now we're ready to begin. Listen and answer questions 1 to 7.
As I'm sure most of you have already heard, the deadline for the QCOM project has been changed, which means we now have only 5 days left to get everything prepared. For that reason, I'd like you, Jack and Kate, to drop what you are doing and lend us a hand checking the documents for any typos from tomorrow.
I didn't notice you at the meeting this morning.
No, I had to see a client this morning. I didn't get back in time. How was the meeting?
Oh well, you know, the same old stuff. Nothing was said that you don't already know.
I guess I won't feel bad about missing it then.
Danby Township officials ask you to help them keep your neighborhood clean and attractive. To avoid having items blown around by the wind, please put all discarded food and household items in bags or containers before putting them out for collection. Residential waste collection takes place on Tuesdays and Fridays, and grass and leaves are picked up on Thursdays. Bill, do you think you could visit the Taylorville branch on Tuesday?
Tuesday? I'm afraid that's impossible. I'm going to be busy all next week.
That's a problem. The head office promised them we would send someone down to have a look at their air conditioning early next week.
I bought a pair of jeans last weekend. They were £20, but as they were in the sale, I got £5 off. I took them home, but when I tried them on, they didn't fit. The sales assistant didn't give me a receipt, and I forgot to ask for one, so I can't take them back.
So now that you've seen it, what do you think of the new training package?
Well, it's certainly better than the old one.
That's true. But what kind of feedback did you get from the trainees?
It's hard to say. They all seemed to enjoy the session, but had mixed feelings about how useful it was.
Good day, class. Today we're going to continue our discussion of American music with a look at the songs of the frontier period. Nearly everyone who went west, the mountaineers, the miners, the river raftsmen, the railroad workers, had songs to accompany their work. And after work, the men and women of the frontier sang and danced to fiddle tunes.
Now you will have some time to check your answers. That is the end of part 1. Part 2. You are going to hear 2 conversations, and you will have to answer some multiple choice questions based on these conversations. Part 2, questions 8 to 11. First, you will have some time to look at questions 8 to 11. Listen to part of a conversation between 2 students, and choose the best answer, A to D, to answer questions 8 to 11. You will hear the recording once only. Now we are ready to begin. Listen and answer questions 8 to 11.
So, Rebecca, what did you do for spring break?
I went to Southern California. I was in Los Angeles and San Diego. Oh, and I stopped in San Juan Capistrano. That's south of Los Angeles and north of San Diego. I happened to be there just about the time the swallows returned.
Oh, I've heard about that. They always return on the same day, don't they?
That's right, on March 19th. And they always fly away on the same day, October 23rd. In the meantime, they migrate over 7,000 miles to get to their winter homes.
7,000 miles, imagine. And always coming back on the same day.
Yes, except for 1 year, a long time ago, they were delayed for a day by a storm at sea.
So what's the town of San Juan Capistrano like?
Oh, it's a pleasant little town. Once there was a famous mission church there.
Once? What happened to it?
It was destroyed by an earthquake almost 200 years ago. But there is an old adobe church that survived. The swallows build their nests in the walls and towers of that church.
You sure were lucky to be there on the one day of the year when the swallows return.
Well, I wasn't there exactly on that day. I got to town a couple of days later, but I did see the parade celebrating the swallows' return.
Now you will have some time to check your answers. Part 2, questions 12 to 15. First, you will have some time to look at questions 12 to 15. Listen to part of a conversation between a student, Sandra, and her tutor. Choose the best answer, A to D, for questions 12 to 15. You will hear the recording once only. Now we are ready to begin. Listen and answer questions 12 to 15.
Right, Sandra. You wanted to see me to get some feedback on your group's proposal. The one you're submitting for the Geography Society field trip competition.
Uh-huh.
I've had a look through your proposal, and I think it's a really good choice. In fact, I only have a few things to say about it, but even in an outline document like this, you really have to be careful to avoid typos and problems with layout in the proposal, and even in the contents page. So read it through carefully before submitting it, okay?
Will do.
And I've made a few notes on the proposal about things which could have been better sequenced.
Okay.
As for the writing itself, I've annotated the proposal as and where I thought it could be improved. Generally speaking, I feel you've often used complex structures and long sentences for the sake of it, and as a consequence, although your paragraphing and inclusion of subheadings help, It's quite hard to follow your train of thought at times.
Oh.
So, cut them down a bit, can you?
Really?
Yes, and don't forget simple formatting like numbering.
Didn't I use page numbers?
I didn't mean that. Look, you've remembered to include headers and footers, which is good, but listing ideas clearly is important. Number them, or use bullet points, which is even clearer. Then you'll focus the reader on your main points. I thought your suggestion to go to the Navajo Tribal Park was a very good idea.
No, I've always wanted to go there.
Now you will have some time to check your answers. That is the end of part 2. Part 3. You are going to hear part of a lecture, and you will have to answer 5 multiple-choice questions based on what you hear. First, you will have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Listen to part of a lecture on bilingualism and choose the best answer, A to D, to answer questions 16 to 20. You will hear the recording once only. Now we are ready to begin. Listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
What she was particularly interested in was whether it took the subject longer to react when a square lit up on one side of the screen, say the left, and the subject had to press the shift key on the right-hand side. She'd expected that it would take more processing time than if a square lit up on the left and the candidates had to press a left key. This was because of a phenomenon known as the Simon effect, where basically the brain gets a bit confused because of conflicting demands being made on it. In this case, seeing something on the right and having to react on the left. And this causes a person's reaction times to slow down. The results of the experiment showed that the bilingual subjects responded more quickly than the monolingual ones. That was true both when the squares were on the correct side of the screen, so to speak, and even more so when they were not. So, bilingual people were better able to deal with the Simon effect than the monolingual ones. So, what's the explanation for this? Well, the result of the experiment suggests that bilingual people are better at ignoring information which is irrelevant to the task in hand and just concentrating on what's important. One suggestion given by Dr. Bialystok was that it might be because someone who speaks 2 languages can suppress the activity of parts of the brain when it isn't needed. In particular, the part that processes whichever language isn't being used at that particular time. Well, she then went on to investigate that with a second experiment. But again, the bilingual group performed better. And what was particularly interesting, and this is, I think, why the experiments have received so much publicity, is that in all cases, the performance gap between monolinguals and bilinguals actually increased with age, which suggests that bilingualism protects the mind against decline. So, in some way, the lifelong experience of managing 2 languages may prevent some of the negative effects of ageing.
You will now have some time to check your answers. That is the end of part 3. You now have 5 minutes to copy your answers to the answer sheet. That is the end of the midterm listening exam.